she is, but I do think it might be someone with real power, and it shouldn't be. She wanted her own Hail to the Chiefs song, and it happened. It's called Fanfare for the First Lady. It's a terrible song. Listen to a little bit of this. The point is her ego. Her ego is out of control.
What happens when the queen of political spin finally loses control? Picture Hillary Clinton going into full meltdown mode as Megyn Kelly pulls skeletons out of her overflowing closet. This isn't just politics, it's a high-speed train wreck, and you've got front row seats with popcorn in hand. Secrets are flying, tempers are exploding, and egos are crashing in the most dramatic way imaginable. Think the scandals were done? Not even close. This is the sequel you didn't know you needed, and Hillary's fury just turned into must-see TV.
Has a very weird and I think shitty marriage. I don't think she has a husband who is in love with her or faithful to her, and I think I can't really blame him because she seems to have accepted this behavior since the inception of their marriage. And so, past this prologue, you're going to get what you tolerate. You know, what you permit, you promote. She spent all of her daughter's upbringing away, at work, at the law firm, in the White House, running for office, and Chelsea Clinton is not a nice person.
Before we move on, hit that like button and subscribe because you know you don't want to miss this. Hillary Clinton has always carried herself like the political version of a fortress: stone walls, iron gates, polished windows, and a moat full of excuses. For decades, she's strutted through scandal after scandal if she had diplomatic immunity from reality. Emails just a technical hiccup. Strange connections? Merely misunderstood networking.
Happening in America. You can feel it. Something we've worked for and dreamed of for a long time. Donald Trump fell asleep at his own trial, and when he woke up, he made his own kind of history. The first person to run for president with 34 felonies.
Her entire public persona was wrapped in layers of bulletproof spin, as if she believed the world would eventually get tired of asking questions. Spoiler alert, it didn't. Enter Megyn Kelly, the media's version of a laser pointer aimed straight at Hillary's darkest corners. Kelly doesn't throw softballs, she launches truth grenades. And on this day, she showed up with a full arsenal.
Classified appendix to Durham's report from May of 2023. Let's see. Reveals strong evidence that the FBI covered up a plot by the Hillary Clinton campaign to amplify ties between Trump and Russia. That the FBI covered up the plot. This is the new piece of it that's being dropped today, because we knew Hillary did it. And Fox Digital had reported earlier this week that we were going to see this annex, and it was going to suggest the FBI knew that she was going to do it and then covered it up. And that's where we're going now with this, that Kash Patel said he found the Durham appendix and thousands of other documents inside a burn bag in a secret room at FBI headquarters.
While Hillary delivered her usual routine, smiles that looked practiced in front of a mirror and talking points polished smoother than marble, Megyn Kelly came armed with receipts. The moment was pure television gold. You could almost hear Hillary's political armor crack and screech as the first fractures began to show.
Than it was even 4 years ago, never mind 8 or 10 years ago, when she was doing all this. And back to Hillary, you know, the whole, oh, she has a hat she's tweeted herself out wearing, but her emails. She's tried to turn it into this ridiculous joke, like, oh, but the moon landing, like you nutcases who are still railing about this made up scandal. This thing that, you know, you've used to try to unfairly tar me. She did need to distract from that email.
Megyn didn't just peel back a layer of spin, she ripped it off like duct tape on bearskin. What she exposed wasn't pretty. Dirty secrets came spilling out, and Hillary's composure fell apart faster than a house of cards in a wine tunnel. It was like watching someone's carefully built Jenga tower get knocked over by the world's most relentless toddler.
Should be in jail. Literally, Hillary Clinton should be behind bars. And so should the people who worked for her who did this. This is so blatantly corrupt. She wanted to distract from her email scandal. She cooked up a plan to accuse Trump of being a Russian agent. in order to distract from her own legitimate scandal. She made up a scandal about Trump being a Russian asset.
At first, Hillary tried her usual tactics: deflect, dismiss, and dance around the point like a lawyer in a courtroom drama. But Megyn Kelly wasn't there to play the friendly interviewer. She was judge, jury, and demolition crew all in one. Each fact she dropped landed like a hammer. And then came the explosion. Hillary didn't just lose her cool, she completely detonated. The woman who once prided herself on being battle-tested went nuclear under the studio lights. Her voice tightened, her face turned crimson, and suddenly she looked less like a seasoned stateswoman and more like a malfunctioning robot short-circuiting in real time. If you squinted, you could almost imagine sparks flying from her ears. The meltdown was spectacular, like a pressure cooker left too long on high heat. Steam blasting in every direction, the lid rattling until it finally blew with a deafening pop that left the kitchen in chaos. We're talking about the shady business deals that have hovered over her career like storm clouds that never quite disappear. The questionable alliances that make you wonder whether her schedule was organized by an ethics committee or an underground poker club. And the kind of revelations that leave everyday people shaking their heads asking, how did she get away with this for so long?
Op-ed, which is really pretty spectacular in the New York Times. First of all, my team just showed me this. Have you seen the cover for her new book? It's something lost, something gained. Gained is with a Freudian slip. And I like the amount of retouching on this face I haven't seen since, Joan Rivers had her 15th surgery. God love Joan. I don't know what she's trying to be with this soft focus. My executive producer, Steve Krakauer, is like, she looks nothing.
Kelly laid it all out like a prosecutor building her case, and Hillary had nowhere to run. Suddenly, all those carefully rehearsed sound bites sounded stale, and every attempt to pivot felt awkward, like a comedian bombing on stage and desperately changing the subject mid-joke. And the angrier she got, the funnier it became. Here's the thing, when most people get called out, they either defend themselves calmly or retreat to regroup. Hillary, she went full supernova. Her strategy wasn't to defuse the bomb, but to burn the whole building down with her still inside. She threw out accusations, excuses, and weak jabs, none of which landed with any real force. The more she flailed, the more Megyn Kelly tightened the screws, calmly delivering blow after blow, while Hillary's meltdown reached cartoonish levels. And the best part, the public reaction. Viewers at home weren't just entertained. They were glued to their screens like it was the finale of a drama they didn't even know they'd been watching. Social media exploded with memes within minutes, gifs of Hillary's meltdown spreading faster than wildfire. One moment she was the untouchable political machine, the next she was trending for all the wrong reasons.
I think really is just sort of getting along based on the family name at this point. And so now she's got a daughter who I guess married a rich guy but is struggling in her own right. Hillary's in a loveless marriage. She probably doesn't have a lot of real friends, just people who are glamours. And so she absolutely does have to write a fifth memoir and go on MSNBC and be told that she's amazing.
And here's the delicious irony. Hillary has spent her entire career trying to control the narrative, yet the more she tried to seize control here, the more it slipped through her fingers. It was like trying to grab water with a clenched fist. The tighter she squeezed, the less she held. By the end, Megyn Kelly was standing tall, practically glowing in victory, while Hillary looked like the star of a blooper reel gone viral. But this wasn't just about one humiliating meltdown. The secrets that spilled that day had staying power. They raised fresh questions about Hillary's entire political legacy and reopened old wounds she'd hoped the public had forgotten. It was the journalistic equivalent of slowly turning up a spotlight and watching the lead character squirm. Hillary's explosion was the sound of decades of spin finally slamming into the brick wall of reality. By the time it was over, she wasn't just embarrassed, she was politically gutted. All that remained was the image of a woman who, for all her experience and polish, couldn't survive one relentless session of truth-telling. Megyn Kelly didn't just win the exchange. She dismantled a myth and delivered a moment of television so chaotic, so hilarious, and so revealing that it instantly carved itself into political history.
Going up to her and sitting down next to her, taking her in my arms and saying, "Look at me, listen to me. You will survive. You will have a good family of your own. and 3 children. And as hard as it might be to imagine, your daughter will grow up and become the President of the United States. I am as sure of this as anything I have ever known. America is the greatest country in the world.
Hillary Clinton didn't just explode once and retreat. Oh no, she went on a multi-stage eruption like a volcano that refuses to stop spewing ash until the entire countryside is covered in soot. What started as a small crack in her composure quickly turned into a full-on Mount Vesuvius moment. And Megyn Kelly stood there like a seasoned tour guide, casually pointing out every plume of smoke with a smile. The first wave of revelations zeroed in on Hillary's infamous dealings, the kind of backroom arrangements that have shadowed her name since the 90s. Megyn laid it all out with surgical precision, reminding the audience how Clinton's career has always been tied to coincidences that somehow end up benefiting her inner circle. She connected the dots, traced the money, and brought back whispers that had been conveniently ignored for years. In an instant, Hillary's polished narrative looked less like a success story and more like a crooked flowchart scribbled by a toddler. Hillary's response was priceless. She tried to slap on that trademark half smile, the one that's supposed to say, "I'm unbothered."
Okay, I raised Chelsea Clinton because her mother, Hillary, for some reason, thought it would be moving, a good idea, a good PR move, for her to, on camera, read the acceptance speech she was going to give in 2016, the night she never was able to let down the balloons and the fireworks. And it's part of a masterclass, I guess, educational video on the topic of resilience. And here's a little soundbite.
Except this time, that half smile looked less like calm confidence and more like someone trying to hold in a sneeze at a funeral. Her eyes darted, her shoulders tensed, and for a split second, you could see it, the realization that her usual deflection routine wasn't going to work this time. Megyn wasn't buying the act, and neither was the audience. So Hillary cranked things up. She raised her voice, wagged her finger, and even dusted off the old playbook of blaming her critics for being obsessed. It was the political equivalent of shouting, "Why are you still talking about this?" while standing in the middle of a 5-alarm fire you started yourself. Each outburst only made her look more shaken, and every calm, surgical rebuttal from Megyn made the contrast even more brutal. And that's what made the clash so riveting. Megyn Kelly didn't need theatrics. She simply shifted gears and turned the spotlight onto Hillary's long history with power, reminding everyone how she had spent decades branding herself as a tireless champion of the people while racking up critics who accused her of steamrolling anyone who stood in her way. Suddenly, old stories of aides, insiders, and former allies turned enemies came flooding back into the conversation.
Is it over? Is she done? I'm so uncomfortable.
I don't know about you, but that speech makes me, I relive that same night that Trump got elected, man. It makes me feel so good when I hear that.
I'm, the kids say cringe. It's very cringy, the whole thing. And why, of all time, right, like for 4 years and beyond, we were always saying she's like a nice woman. She never expresses emotion. She had
It was like Megyn had opened a closet, and instead of a single skeleton falling out, an entire marching band of skeletons came parading through, brass section, drumline, and all. Every detail was a brutal reminder that Hillary's career wasn't built on warm hugs and sunshine, but on elbows thrown in the dark and ladders climbed over other people's backs. And she hated every second of it. She squirmed, interrupted, rolled her eyes, anything to claw back a shred of control. But control had already left the building. The harder she tried to downplay the accusations, the clearer it became that Megyn had struck a nerve. Hillary fell back on the oldest trick in the book, accusing Megyn's questions of being unfair, biased, part of some grand vendetta. But here's the problem. When someone is calmly listing your greatest hits of controversy like it's a Spotify playlist, playing the victim card doesn't exactly win sympathy. Instead, it made Hillary look like a sore loser in a game she thought she'd already won. Megyn wasn't having any of it. She brushed aside the complaints, stayed locked in, and kept tearing down Hillary's carefully built image one brick at a time.
The law with that homebrew server that had been accessed by foreign agents. She compromised national intelligence information. She did things she would never have allowed anybody at the State Department to do under her. And that leaves me back to Schellenberger here. This is page 4 of his report. He writes as follows: the Russian reports, again, that the Dutch spied on, that we got our hands on, also claimed, and listen to this, I mean, you probably already know this stuff, Glenn, but claimed that Attorney General Loretta Lynch, okay, this is back in 2016, people, remember, Obama's president, Loretta Lynch is his Attorney General, and her DOJ/FBI are investigating the Hillary Clinton emails.
And the funniest part, Hillary couldn't stop herself from reacting. If she had just sat there, let Megyn rattle off the laundry list, and responded with cold, calculated composure, she might have salvaged a little dignity. But no, she took every single piece of bait. It was like watching a cat chase every laser dot until it finally collapses from exhaustion. The audience ate it up. Every outburst turned into a viral clip. Every awkward grimace became a meme. And every failed attempt at spin turned into material for late-night comedy monologues. People weren't just laughing at the secrets being exposed, they were laughing at the spectacle of a seasoned politician coming apart on live TV. What really sealed the humiliation was how Megyn wrapped everything together. She didn't just drop isolated bombshells. She wove them into a bigger picture, a full-blown pattern of behavior. By the end, Hillary wasn't fighting over individual points. She was drowning under the weight of an entire narrative that made her look less like a public servant and more like a living, breathing cautionary tale. And that's when the final explosion came. Hillary's mask slipped completely. The polished politician was gone, replaced by raw, unfiltered anger.
Clinton decided to drop an op-ed in the New York Times today that's entitled, "How much dumber will this get?" And she uses Signalgate and the messaging by Pete Hegseth and Mike Walls and JD Vance and Tulsi and others on there as the jumping off point to talk about how dumb the Trump administration is. Some highlights. She calls the Trump administration hypocritical, dangerous, and dumb over this story. It's not the hypocrisy that bothers me, it's the stupidity.
She leaned forward, snapped back with venom, and unleashed a tirade sharp enough to peel paint off the walls. But instead of intimidating Megyn, it only proved the point. This was a woman so consumed by her own scandals, so allergic to accountability, that even the faintest whiff of truth sent her spiraling. It wasn't strength, it wasn't leadership, it was pure desperation. Megyn Kelly, meanwhile, barely flinched. She let Hillary vent, let her roar, and then calmly delivered one last perfectly timed jab that tied the entire spectacle into a neat bow. No shouting, no theatrics, just a mic drop moment that left Hillary looking like a fighter who'd been knocked out in the first round, but still insisted she was fine while stumbling around the ring. The fallout was instant. Hillary had gone in hoping to control the narrative, but instead handed her critics the ultimate gift, live footage of her imploding under pressure. Megyn didn't just expose her secrets, she stripped away the illusion